Hi there, this is going to be a video that talks you through step by step how you can choose your next Quran. Step 1 in choosing your next Quran is to make sure that you are getting an Arabic Quran. Now we know in Islam that Arabic Quran is the only authentic type of Quran. Nothing that is translated can ever be the true recitation that Jibril gave to Muhammad. And for that reason, you should only ever be buying an Arabic Quran. Step 2, make sure that you're buying your next Arabic Quran from a trusted Islamic source. Don't use somewhere like Amazon, don't use eBay, but go directly to Islamic websites to make sure you're getting an authentic Quran. Step 3, make sure you pick the correct Arabic Quran. Now, it's often a misconception in Islam that many people believe that there is only one Quran, and that there was only one recitation given to Muhammad from Jibril. This is incorrect. In Islam, in authentic Sunnah, it is clear that actually there are many different Qurans with many different recitations that have many different words. These are all valid. Even if they say different things, they are still correct and still considered Quran. The name for these is Qira'at. So with that in mind, let's make sure we look at some of these and we can decide for ourselves which one is the right Quran for us. Okay, so here we are at easyquranstore.com. Now remember what I said before about how you can't just buy Qurans from any old place, but rather you should ensure that you're getting it from a trusted Islamic source. Well, we know some trusted publishers, and this website actually happens to be the shopping storefront for one of the big publishers of Arabic Qurans in the UK. So this is a great website to use, and they give some information about that particular publisher, about when they were established, who established the company, and they even give you the company number and the UK registered business. That's amazing. Okay, so let's start off. Okay, let's have a look at these different narrations. So we need to remember that although we may have been taught that there is only one Arabic Quran, there are in fact many different narrations of that one Arabic Quran. And what that means practically is that the revelation was not just given in one way, it was given in many different ways, each of them correct and true, even if the words are different. So let's go through some examples here. So we can see the Welsh reading. Let's go into that one. Now the reading that you probably have is you probably already have, if you perhaps been a Muslim for a while and you've read the standardized 1924 Cairo edition of what is called the Hafs Quran. Now the Hafs Quran is a particular qira'at, a particular reading that is very popular in the Muslim world, and that happens to be read by about 95% of Muslims worldwide. These variations are much less known, not many Muslims know about them, and this is why in the Islamic world there is often a misconception that there is only one Quran, mostly because most Muslims only ever read one Quran, and it happens to be the Hafs Quran. But there's no real difference in terms of authenticity of the verses of the Quran compared to any other narration of the Quran. They're all equally valid in Islam and all equally true. So let's continue. So we're looking at the different Welsh readings. This one I think is just the Quran in the Welsh reading. Let's go into this one. So it costs £11, just about round it up, £12. Hardcover. It's got some good reviews, 181 reviews. So I guess there are quite a few people reading this particular narration then, or at least they own it. We can keep scrolling down, and it tells us here, narration is a Welsh narration. Now, some people might try and say that all this is it's just the pronunciation of the words. It's just the way that you pronounce, and it's just the particular rules for how you pronounce these Arabic words. Well, that's not true. And we know it's not true is because there is a distinction between Qira'at and Tajweed. Now, Tajweed is exactly that, the different rules that we use to pronounce different Arabic words, and that can vary depending on actually different Qira'at, because different Qira'at is often tied to different Tajweed. But the Qira'at itself is not the Tajweed directly. It's a different thing. The Qira'at is a different narration, a different reading, and that different narration or reading has different words. That's key to remember. But let's keep going on. So what can this tell us? Okay, so it says here that this Tajweed Quran is in a Welsh narration. You can see there they've clearly separated them into two distinct things, right? Tajweed is not the same as Qira'at. It just so happens that different Qira'at have different Tajweed. And it tells us exactly how this Tajweed is set up, different... That's fine. Cool, so this is one option. Now I happen to know that this particular narration, this particular Qira'at, the Welsh reading, is popular in North Africa, particularly in Morocco. So let's go back, back again. So we have this different reading now. I think it might be Kaloun, is how you pronounce this one. So let's have a look. I think this is what we're looking for. So this one has 2 reviews, so not many people have been buying this one. Again, same price, they cost exactly the same. Can you get it in large? You can get it in large if you'd like it. And again, we go to narration, it says Kaloun. So clearly these are being differentiated from the standard Hafs Quran that you read. This Arabic Quran will have different words than your Hafs Quran that you read today. Now, I also want to point out, again, this is from a trusted publisher that ships international Arabic Qurans around the world. And it is shipping from the UK. Cool, so that's 2 different narrations. I mean, 3 if you include Hafs Quran. That's another Qira'at. Let's keep scrolling down. Ooh, where are we? Let's go back again. Okay, so we have another reading here. Now, this one's more expensive. I mean, we know, Islamically speaking, that this can't be better than the Hafs Quran, because all Qira'at is all true, and all goes back to the time of the Prophet, and they have different words. So the Prophet must have gave his recitation in many different words. It's also worth pointing out here, Qira'at and Aruf are not the same thing. There is a concept in Islam called the Aruf, and this is the Arabic term for the different modes, which is what most scholars will say, the different modes of the Quran that Muhammad recited, because according to Sunnah, he did recite the Quran in different modes, particularly 7 modes. Now, a lot of people get confused because they think that since there are, in some circles, 7 Qira'at and there are 7 Aruf, that must mean the Qira'at are the Aruf, but that's not the case. One problem you have is that, well, the Qira'at and the Aruf don't always align up in terms of number. There's always 7 Aruf, but there are many different types of Qira'at, depending on who you ask. Some say there are 7, some say there are 10, and if you want to look into ones that aren't usually accepted, then you can get very high and you get up to about 37. So here's another reading. Again, I don't know why it's more expensive. It might just be because it's bigger, but I don't think having a bigger Quran makes it any more correct. Now, they've obviously made a mistake here, because this says narration is Hafs, when it isn't the Hafs Quran. It doesn't come from the teachings of Hafs and his teacher Asim. So it doesn't come from him, but I guess maybe that's a typo. And we can keep going down, and here are all the different ones that we can buy, all the different narrations. So I guess really it's up to you to figure out exactly which reading is the best for you. It depends on what words you find more particularly interesting than others, what you find more authentic. Scholars will have a wide range of opinions on which narration is best to read from. The Hafs Quran wasn't chosen because it's more correct. There is no such thing in the Islamic world as a more correct Quran. They are all correct, and they're all affirmed by the scholars. And they obviously aren't just pronunciation, because if it was pronunciation, then there wouldn't be this concept of Qira'at. Instead, it would just be Tajweed, which would just tell you how to pronounce it. This is something different. This is something that is going to hopefully get you to question a little bit more about why you didn't know about this. Or if you did know about this, how can it be that Muhammad was saying multiple different things and revealing wahi revelation, and yet he was doing it multiple times in multiple ways? Does that make sense? Because to me, I have difficulty understanding that. I can't understand how revelation can be revealed in different words that mean different things and yet still convey the same message. But perhaps we should look into this. Let's look into the differences between some of these readings so I can illustrate exactly why they aren't just issues of pronunciation. They are differences in the meanings of words. Okay, so now I'm going to look at the Concise Encyclopedia of Islam so that we can have a look at how Qira'at is defined and talk a little bit about historically how Islam interpreted what the Qira'at was. So we see here, historically speaking, after the definitive recension of the Quran made at the command of the Caliph Uthman. Now just to give you some context here, in the Sunnah, authentic Sunnah, Sahih al-Bukhari and others, it is revealed that the third Caliph, Uthman, collected many different written down Qurans that had different surahs, that had, in terms of content, they had different numbers of surahs, and they differed in terms of what the Quran was. Now we know of at least 3 of these that differed. So Zayd bin Thabit had his copy, Hafs had got under her pillow. Then later on there was Ubay ibn Ka'b, he had his copy with 116 surahs in Damascus. And then there was Abdullah ibn Masud, who had either 110 or 111 surahs in his copy when he was in Basra. Now Uthman ordered these be collected because, according to the Sunnah, people worried that they were going to differ about what the Quran was. There was a genuine fear that the Quran was going to have variants in it and that someone needed to do something about it, and this fell to Uthman. What did Uthman do? Well, he called for these different copies. Ubay ibn Ka'b, Abdullah ibn Masud, Zayd bin Thabit, they were collected all, and then he set out a team of scribes to go and rewrite the Quran using these different copies, as well as oral tradition, as well as things that were written on stones and leaves at the time. And he said that we should get rid of everything that doesn't conform to the Qurayshi dialect. Now when he says get rid of, he means burn. In fact, in the Sunnah it says very explicitly he burns them. So we need to remember here, there was a point when the Quran, which was revealed in many different modes, 7, was decided that actually that wasn't a good idea, even though it was Muhammad himself who revealed it that way, because the third Caliph, Uthman, decided to gather these different ways of it being recited, and these weren't just pronunciation issues because they themselves worried about how this was going to become a different Quran, and he standardized it in one particular form, getting rid of the other forms. Okay, that's the context for this. Certain variant readings existed and indeed persisted and increased as the companions who had removed the text died. Sorry, had memorized the text died. Okay, so despite what Uthman did, these variations still persisted. Now, I think that those variations were probably more minor compared to what the Aruf was, but nonetheless, they kept being around. In fact, there seems to be good evidence to think that we actually, that Ibn Masud's copy was still either being recited orally or being copied at a much later point, after Uthman had already burned his copy. So, let's continue reading. And because the Arabic script, lacking vowel signs and even the necessary diacriticals to distinguish between certain consonants, was inadequate, in practice the authority of oral transmissions and reciters was an essential complement to the recorded written text. Okay, so key thing to understand here is that in the time of Muhammad, the Arabic text as we understand it was not formalized. In other words, there was a consonantal rasm, which is the base Arabic text, but there was no diacritical marks to distinguish actual words. So in other words, when you were writing the Quran at the time, they couldn't write the explicit meaning, but rather they could pick Arabic script that would convey a range of meanings, and it was then left to the reader to insert in their own mind exactly what that meaning was, based off a different amount of possible narrations. Let's keep going on here. As Islam became diffused among peoples whose Arabic fell far short of the Qurayshi standard, or for whom Arabic was not even a mother tongue, it became a matter of urgency to remedy the deficiencies of the script. So again, we know that there are deficiencies in the Arabic script at this time. It wasn't a properly developed written language, it was only an oral language. Formalized grammar, and preserve the integrity of the revealed text and of Arabic, the sacred language. The rapid vulgarization of Arabic that ensued in the first centuries of Islam, when the language, no longer protected by its isolation, became the lingua franca of a vast realm, was a phenomenon noted and deployed by the scholars of this age. Let's keep reading. In the 4th Islamic century, it was decided to have a recourse to readings, qira'at, handed down from 7 authoritative readers in order, moreover, to ensure accuracy of transmission. Now they go on to describe exactly how that was done, how that was made. There were 2 transmitters of the particular reading. This is in sharp contrast to what was originally decided by Uthman. Uthman thought that these different readings, these different narrations, this qira'at, should not be allowed because it was causing confusion and it was making people think that there were different Qurans. His approach to burning it and just having the Qurayshi dialect as the only version of this qira'at that existed, he then made copies of this and he sent it out to the 5 cities. That failed, and it failed because there was still, either in oral tradition or written tradition, these different variants, these different qira'ats still being spoken. That would mean that these different qira'ats were being used in prayer. This, therefore, is very substantial and quite meaningful because we need to make sure that these different readings all come back to the time of Muhammad. The issue with that, though, is that Uthman himself tried to eliminate these. He tried to eliminate the different variants and to standardize the Quran into just the Qurayshi dialect. So it's worth mentioning here, these 7 readings have, in the course of time, came to be associated with the 7 Aruf of the Hadith. Now again, there's no actual scholarly reason to believe that they are. It's just assumed, probably because it makes things a lot easier to understand. Okay, so now let's look at the differences in these actual qira'ats, the differences of the many different Arabic Qurans. So here we have a comparison. This is just comparing Hafs, which is the most common one, to Warsh, the one that is often most used in North Africa, particularly in Morocco. Let's compare some of the different passages of different words. So here we can see the Arabic script, and we can see what it translates to. Allah is the self-sufficient, whereas, and that's in the Hafs, and then in the Warsh, it's Allah, the self-sufficient. So here you just have a case of missing words. Now, in this instance, it doesn't actually change the meaning. It's just a different way of having the sentence constructed. These are quite common. We'll find more of these as we go on. So again here, and hasten to, and it gives you the actual reference in the Quran, Surah 3, Ayah 133, or hasten to. Again, differences in the words included. Now, let's find one that is a clear case of a difference. Okay, so here's one. It says here, he said, my Lord knows. And that is Surah 21, Ayah 4. But in the Welsh Quran, it says, say, my Lord knows. Now you see, this is interesting because in this context, it's likely to be talking about Muhammad in the Welsh Quran, where it's Allah saying to Muhammad, say, my Lord knows. But in the Hafs Quran, it's he said, my Lord knows. See, now you're starting to deal with different meanings, because now you have to say, well, is this Allah speaking? Or are we talking about Allah in the third person? Which is it? Is Allah speaking in the third person or the third person? Or is it a different person completely in Hafs? Well, that's a question. Let's keep going. So here's another one. So we have in Surah 2, Ayah 58 in the Hafs Quran, it says, we give mercy. Whereas in the Welsh Quran, it says, he gives mercy. Again, is Allah talking in the first person or is he talking in the third person? So again, straight downwards we say, we have this one in Surah 2, Ayah 140. You, the plural, say, whereas in the Welsh Qur'an, the Welsh Arabic Quran, it says, they say. In fact, interestingly, it's actually a different reference number. You can even see that here it's 2139 and here it's 2140. Okay, let's look at Surah 43, Ayah 19. In the Hafs, it says they are slaves of the most gracious. But in the Welsh Arabic Quran, it says they are with the most gracious. Okay, so which one is it? So are they the slaves of the most gracious? Or are they with the most gracious? According to scholarship, they are both correct, and they are both the same Quran. Let's keep going down. So here's another one. This is Surah Fatiha, Ayah 4. Owner of the day in the Hafs Quran, compared to King of the day in the Welsh Quran. A owner is not necessarily a king. So necessarily there's a difference between those two words. I could own something and not be a king. Therefore, those words are in contrast to each other. In other words, they can't be both true. Either you're a king or you're not a king. If you're an owner instead, you're something different. So those two things don't add up. Okay, next one. They, in the Hafs, in Surah 2, Ayah 9, Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 9, it says here, they deceive. In the Hafs, in the Welsh, it says they seek to deceive. Okay, so did they deceive or did they only seek to deceive? Because one implies that they did do deception, the other says they merely sought to do deception. So again, those are two different things. They can't both be true. Either one is, or none of them are, or they're contradictory. Here's another one. They lie in Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 10. In the Hafs or in the Welsh, they were lied to or they deny. Wait, did they lie or were they lied to? Obviously, those are two different things. Okay, let's go to the next one. So here we have, in Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 184, in the Hafs, a redemption by feeding a poor man. And we can contrast this to Welsh, where it says, a redemption by feeding poor men. Okay, so now you have a verse that talks about feeding one person, but that same verse in a different Arabic Quran now says feeding multiple people. So again, that's a contradiction. Which one is it? They can't both be true at the same time. So by simply affirming them doesn't help. All we're doing by affirming that is we're affirming a contradiction. Let's keep moving on. Okay, Surah 28, Ayah 42. In the Hafs, it says 2 works of magic. In the Welsh, it says 2 magicians. Magic is not the same as a magician. Let's keep moving on. In Hafs, in Surah 66, Ayah 12, we have her Lord and his books. And then in the Welsh, we have her Lord and his book. So one is plural, one is not plural, one implies there are many books, one implies there is only a singular book. That is a contradiction. And there we have it. There are different Arabic Qurans that are available today. They are called Qira'at, and you can buy them online. And I would encourage you to do so yourself and to read it for yourself, especially if you're an Arabic speaker. So you can validate what I'm telling you. Nothing that I'm saying is a shock in Islamic scholarship. It's just something that isn't really talked about a lot in the Ummah. It's not something that you'll find often mentioned in the masjid, the madrasa. They won't talk about these things because it's uncomfortable for people to know that there are different Arabic Qurans with different words.